Hello everybody, this is me. You won't see me today, but you will see my screen. And I want to walk through a couple of things that I wanted to demo in class. The first is to go back over this users array like we had, and to think about how to do slightly more complex modeling of user data, particularly for user tests. So what I'm going to do to start, first I'm going to make sure I've got all my commits in order here. So we're starting clean. Good. All right, let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it. Cool. All right, so I want to make sure that I can model more complex users, and one of the ways to do that is to change this simple array of strings into an array of objects. So we can do something like username. And actually, because I'm going to do Freddy failure is never going to be able to log in, I'm going to drop Freddy failure into the 0 position of the array. That'll make life a little bit easier. And let's just do, here's Sally success. And we'll drop a couple lines down there. Let's actually give Sally her name so we can refer to that. So there's Sally. And let's say we're going to do, I don't know, an account balance here. So I'm going to say that Sally, being as successful as she is, has a 0 balance, just like that. And because I want to use this as currency and I don't want to muck around too much with JavaScript and numbers, I'll leave her balance as a string, just like that. And then we can go and drop in one more user here, which is polyproblem. Just like that. There's polyproblem, and again, we'll model her name as Polly. And we'll also give her a balance, but she's got some debt. So we'll say balance for Polly is going to be minus $200, just like that. Okay? So, looks like we're good here. Just going to double check these comments. So, Freddy failure doesn't have anything. He's just going to be the account who was never able to log in. Here's Sally success with her 0 balance, and then Polly problem with her $200 balance, just like that. Okay? So, my old function to find the current user basically is drawing from a hash up in our URL. And I'm going to use that, but the other thing I need to do is actually down here where we're logging someone in. So what I was looking for originally was just to match a value from that array. All right, so what we need to do here instead is to write probably another function where we're actually going to go and work through that array. Let me explain. Let's just drop this actually into good old Firefox Developer Edition here. I'll kill some of these tabs. All right, so we'll go about blank, just like that. So we get our empty JavaScript, so we pop in this users array. All right, so if I need to find a user out of this array, I need a integer for the index. Then I need to actually hit the, in this case, let's see if we try to get Freddy failure's name like that. That's what the syntax looks like. So we need something that's going to be able to do that programmatically so that we can have Sally success or Polly problem or Danny default or all these other different kinds of characters. So the easiest way to do this is actually to just write a little function that's going to loop through our array and try to find a particular user and then return the index on that. Because again, the way that I've got this working is when we log somebody in, we're going to check what index they are. So we'll have a Freddy failure who will ultimately be our console log. Otherwise, we want to do a window location replace like this, but then we'll replace it with the array index of the user that we want to be logged in as. Okay? So if I just try to write this thing real quick on its own, I might do something. Actually, you know what? Let's do it over here so I don't have to save it too much. So let's just find a good spot to write this little function. There's our toggle value, current user. Yeah, let's do it right underneath our list of users. So find a user from our users array. All right, so we can do something like function find user, and we're going to want to be able to grab from the form, did somebody enter Freddie failure or Sally success? So we want to grab a username, and then of course we also want to have our array of users. In this case it's going to be here. So this is a more general function probably than we need, but we won't hard code the particular array into that thing. So we'll find this user, and there's a few different array functions or array methods we could use, like filter and index of, but those are made complicated by the fact that we're dealing with an array of objects. So I'm going to do it very old school, very cross-browser compatible, which of course if we're doing testing kinds of things becomes useful. So we'll just do our good old-fashioned for loop here. We'll just say var I is equal to 0. Our I is less than the length of our array, so it'll go through the whole thing. And at the end of each of those, we'll just increment I by 1 so that we can find the correct thing out of our array. All right, now we need to find the actual truth condition that we're checking for. So we'll do something like this. We want to say if your array's I value on username is equal to user, right? Then we want to return I. All right, just like that. And just for the sake of a missing user, let's return 0 if the thing isn't found, which of course will mean our found user will ultimately end up being Freddie failure. So he's our everyman in the world of failed users. So we'll just return that I. Yeah, I'm doing 2 returns here, but we can always refactor that later. Okay, so that looks good. So we're just checking to see the username property is equal to this user that we'll pass into the function. So let's see if I haven't made any mistakes here. I should be able to go and copy this thing right over into Firefox like this. Good. So now we can do something like find user Sally success. And we want to find her from our users array. So we have to pass in that variable that we assigned to our array. And it comes back 0, which is not correct, right? Because we have 0 elsewhere in our, let's see. Okay, we're setting I is equal to 0. We're looking for the array length is less than I. And then we're incrementing, and we're looking to see if the I value of username is equal to user. If it is, we want to return the state of I. Otherwise, we want to return 0. That may be breaking us out of the function, come to think of it. Let's try it without this extra return statement. Let's just return I. I think that's what the problem is. It's not actually letting us complete the loop, because as soon as it returns a value, the loop is probably going to stop. So one more time, drop in this function without the else statement. All right, and then let's just up arrow through here. There's that function call. There we go. 1. Okay, so see, I know this seems like pedantic stuff in class when I say, oh, don't have multiple return statements in a function, just return one thing based on the value. So you can see my own laziness here got completely screwed up. So let's just drop in a variable. They're cheap, right? We can do something like var user index, and we can set it equal to 0. So we have a 0 value that will return, okay? And then here we can say set user index equal to I. That's, again, if there's the case of a match, right? And then all the way outside of this for loop, we will do return user index, all right? Just like that. So one more time, drop in this new function definition. We'll back it up. Find Sally success again. Okay, there she is with 1. Let's check poly problem. There she is at 2. And we can check Freddie failure, which should be 0, but then let's drop in one like Crazy Carl, who's not in our array, but that'll return a 0, okay? Because we would, do that in an ordinary situation, right? If there were a system we were logging people into and there was a username entered that didn't actually exist, then we would drop something like, user not found or something like that. Okay, cool. So now we've got this find user function where we can go in and grab all these things, and now we just need to drop into our place where we're looking for this user and actually use this thing. So we're saying username value is equal to users. That's not going to be our if statement anymore, right? What we want to do is actually call our find user function, and we'll use this username val, right? Whoop. Let's copy it, not cut it just yet. All right, so we want to find the username of the value. All right, and we can actually just do a variable here. We can do, again, just like we did before, user index is equal to find user value. And then we were going to just do, we can get rid of actually some of this logic. Let's see. We do want to be able to dump somebody in unless there's a bad username. So it'll be a bad username if it's 0. So what we need to check for here is user index greater than 0? If it's greater than 0, then we've found somebody in our array. And in that case, we'll just drop in to our hash. Let's concatenate this here. User index, just like that. So when we find somebody in this more complex array, we're going to get, again, our function is going to return that value. So here we're just going to return that. We check it. If it's greater than 0, that means that that's a successful login. We'll append this for our user lookup function. Otherwise, we'll just do our little console log bad username here, and then on our login page, we'll say incorrect username or password. All right? And then finally, we prevent our default there. Okay. So since we're really cowboy coding here, let's go ahead and look at that current user. So here we're saying window location hash length is greater than 0. Okay, if there is a hash length greater than 0, then we know that we have a hash that we can actually work with. Here we're splitting that hash at the pound sign so we get an array. And we're grabbing the member at position 1, which is actually going to be that number. Okay, and then we're returning the user, just like that. Otherwise, we're returning 3. We might want to do something else, like we're going to return 0. So somehow Freddy failure gets logged in, which shouldn't happen, but that's how it goes. Okay. So, and then the place in our code where we're using the current user function is actually in this little append function, right, where we appended a welcome, right? Logged in user, and then we said welcome account details for, and then we grab user's current user. So what we're going to do here instead is we need to append this. So we can say user's current user. That's going to, again, we're returning just an integer value that's just going to grab something out of the array. And in this case, again, we're dealing with an array of objects. So if Sally's success is in, we want to grab the 1 position in this array. And now, because I've added this name thing, we can do, instead of for Sally's success, we can say Sally, we could welcome her, we could write all kinds of copy that's a little bit more welcoming. But what we need to do now is not just select, as this old code does, the member of the array. We need to actually grab the particular object property. So here we can say for users current user dot name. So that should be Sally here. And if we wanted to, we could do something. This is ugly HTML. But we could do something like oh, I don't know. Here we could echo out her account balance. With a balance of, and then we could do account balance, and then here again, user's current user dot name. This time we'll do user's current user dot balance. And of course, that's a lot of replication. What we might want to do is just inside of our script somewhere, grab this current user, or just return the object that we want. There's a different set of ways that we can handle that. This is verbose, but you know what? For testing at this point in the semester, this is good enough. All right, so we'll drop that balance in like that. All right, now we can try this and see what all is going to fail. All right, so we'll go over to where I've got Firefox going. Let's go to 8080. All right, so let's try Freddy failure here. And again, password isn't going to matter. We can put it whenever we want. Okay. That may or may not be correct, but let's try our Sally success account. And again, we're not checking for passwords, so that can be anything we want it to be. All right, so we got account details for Sally success. And now it's going away. So obviously something is goofed up here. Missing on line 71. Current user dot balance. Well, all right, let's get less creative here and just chop this thing off. See if we can get just her name to show up. For undefined. Oh, right, because I've got the wrong value. That should not be 0 there for Sally. How is Sally getting the wrong? Okay, so let me hit Control-Z here because this can actually work. It's actually where we're assigning the user index. So find user username.value. You see what I'm doing wrong? I'm passing in that user, but I did not pass in the actual array where we're going to need to try to find that user. Right? Find user username value. We need our other users array that we've got from top. Again, that's just a variable that we assigned here, so we weren't doing enough functions there, or enough arguments to our function. Okay, so one more time with feeling. Let's drop this out. Let's go back to our login page. All right, so we need Sally success, and she can put in whatever password she likes. We have her log in. All right, now there's something else that's broken. Great. The bug hunt continues. Find user username value out of the users array. Looking for user index greater than 0. We want to prevent the default. I don't see a reason why that would be bothering us, but obviously something's wrong in this function right now because we're not getting our prevent default. If you saw on the thing, it's giving us our big mess here instead of our nice little window replace with user index there. All right. Let's just do a quick username. We'll grab that out of the value. All right, so we're going to look for a user index greater than 0. If we get that, then we're going to replace this. Okay, and in either case, we want to prevent the default behavior, which was not happening before. All right. Back this up. Let's try it again. Nope, We got still a missing thing here, is that correct? So I keep reintroducing this error here. That's concatenated. Might not look like that space within a argument passed to the function. Oh, nope, missed the concatenating plus sign here. Okay, so let's put that back so that we can actually see what we're doing. There we go. Okay. So one more time, we're going to go back here. Reload this. Sally success. Log her in. There we go. So now we've got account details for Sally with a balance of 0. And you can see that we've got the correct hash now up here. All right. So let's do one more time. This time we'll log in with poly problem. All right. Oh, Polly, you've got a balance of $200. And of course, we would want to handle balance and credit and things like that in different ways. We could do a quick little numeric check. Even though we're passing in strings, we could still check to see whether 200 is greater than 0, right? We can do this in JavaScript. We could say minus 200 greater than 0. That's false, right? And if we did 200 greater than 0, that would be true. Okay, so even though we're passing in a string, and currency is like this, a lot of times when you see an actual application that handles money, it'll work in whatever the smallest unit of the currency is. So what we would probably do is actually store programmatically the number of pennies the person earns, so that we would just have an integer there, right? We could do 200 times 100 and then write some kind of currency formatter elsewhere that's going to allow someone to indicate that. So there's more that we can do on that, but what I want to do for today is to get beyond our little complex users here and actually talk about A and B testing, and particularly how certain kinds of things can't be determined necessarily by usability testing. So for example, even on this login screen here, let's go, right? It's possible there could be somebody on the dev team like, oh, login is so boring and vanilla, who wants to log in? We might want to use some kind of different label for that button. And of course, you could test that on users, but really, something like that, if there truly is a problem with logging in, we'd want to test that over hundreds and hundreds of users and see if there's any difference in success rates or something like that with that login button. So that's what I want to demonstrate today, is to do a little bit of A/B testing. And the thing with A/B testing is you've got to somehow make sure that you have a roughly 50-50 chance of showing any given user a particular design solution, right? So we could have like 50% of the people get log in and 50% of the people get sign in, let's say, right? Well, is there some kind of difference between that? So the first thing we need to do is figure out how to get something that is going to be 50-50 from JavaScript. And you might know that there is a math object in JavaScript that will generate a random number for us, right? We can run this thing as many times as we want. And the way that a random number works in JavaScript is that it's some decimal like this between 0 and 1. What I like to do when I'm dealing with randoms, if I want to do something like 50-50, is to make it into an integer. So I'll probably do something like multiply this by 1,000, right? Now I've got 967, and if I want to go further, I can use another function in the math object of round, and I can do math random times 1,000, round that. Now I'm getting a nice round number, okay? Which doesn't get us at 50-50 quite yet, but what it does get us closer to is that these numbers may be even or odd. Oh, and before I do that, I should say that we don't want to do this, where we do round the random number and multiply that times 1,000, because most of the time, well, first we're going to get a big ugly syntax error. Math random times 1,000. Oh, right, because we moved that thing. Right, because we're usually going to get, although this could work too, where we do 1,000 or 0, something like that. I suppose we could do that, but we can't do what I want to do, which is to determine whether the integer that we're returning is even or odd, and we'll use that as our little coin toss or our true or false, right? And we can use the modulo expression in JavaScript to figure that out. So if we take a number like 442 modulo 2, that should be 0, right? Every even number is going to be divisible by 2 versus 609 if we do modulo 2. That's going to be 1 or some other integer other than 0. Okay, so my little coin toss function I'm going to do, well, first, here we go. All right, so we've got a big ugly commit here. I'm going to commit it as so. Well, let's do our good old patch add thing. Git add patch. All right, so this first hunk, this makes sense. It's two different things. We've increased the complexity of our users array, and we've also added our find user function, but that can work in a single commit. So yes, go ahead and stage that hunk. No, let's not change that. Let's not change that just yet either. And let's not do that either. Okay, so git status, I've got my partial commit, which I can say increased complexity of user array and added find user function. All right, and now I can do my add patch again. All right, that is not going to be the first thing I'm going to commit. We'll save that for later. Okay, so we've got this current user thing, but let's see, don't we have something? Okay, I didn't end up staging any of it. One more time. Not going to do that just yet. All right, so we'll add this hunk. Let's not add this hunk. All right, and actually I am going to add that other hunk from the current user function, because that's actually going to have an effect on that. So here we go. And no, we'll save that for last. Okay, so git commit -m, changed current user behavior on account details and default user, which of course is now 0 instead of 3. So we get Freddy failure in our 0 position. All right, that leaves one thing. Added logic to handle non-failing, well, let's say not handle, to redirect non-failing users. Okay, so everybody but Freddy failure gets passed along. If you're Freddy failure, you're at 0, then you get a bad username thing. Okay? All right, we're clear here. So now what we need to do is actually go and write this little coin toss function. And I'll save myself some typing here by grabbing this math round. Okay, so up here where we've got all of our user things, we've got our toggle values. I guess let's just drop this thing in. Okay. For a coin toss for A/B testing. All right, I might actually call this thing function coin toss, just like that. We don't need any arguments with it because all we want is to get back a true or a false. So I'll just do a var toss, and we'll say this will be true by default, and then grab our var num, we'll get our rounded number there, and then here we'll just do a quick modulo. If num modulo 2 is exactly, let's do this false. I like even numbers to be true. Var toss is false if num modulo 2 is exactly equal to 0. That means it's an even number, in which case our toss will be true. And then we can return toss. Okay, so coin toss is just going to return true or false. And if we want to, we can check this. Again, we'll just drop it into Firefox Developer. All right, and so then we can just do coin toss. True and false. Okay, so we're getting both values. Now, one thing that's fun to do when you do some kind of a function like this that's going to randomly return a different result, true or false usually, is to actually run the thing a bunch of times and see how that stacks up. So let me write this down here so I don't have to do it multiple times. I'm not going to leave this as part of my script, but we will do just a simple for loop here. So we'll do for, well, let's first of all, we'll do a quick variable here. Again, this is just to test our function. I'm writing it here instead of Firefox Developer so I don't mess up. So we can do a var of true tosses is equal to 0. And then we'll do a little for loop that will just say for var I is equal to 0. I is less than, and here we can just hard code a value. Let's test it 1,000 times. And then we'll increment I. Then we can actually drop in if coin toss, which again is going to return a true or a false value. If it returns a true value, then we're going to increment true tosses by 1. Okay? If it's a false value, it won't increment anything. And yeah. And actually, let's do one other thing here. We're going to do true tosses always set to 0 every time we do this. So if we rerun this function, we'll start from 0. Nope, we don't want to do that because that's going to set it at 0 every time. Nah, we'll just do this simple one here. Okay. So here we go. True tosses. So we should see something. Where did I forget the var I? Expected expression got boink. Why doesn't it love me? If coin toss, that should just return a true or false value. I less than 1,000. Yeah. And then we increment it. Here we go. Need 2 pluses to increment, not 1. That was what the error was coming from. Okay, one more time with feeling. Boom. First try, like right on the news, 500, right? So that means there were 500 true tosses. That is incredibly unusual. If we run this thing again, okay, 490. That's a little bit more in the expected range. I get 490 again, 495, 505, 474. That one had a lot of false tosses. But you can see the point, right? Like this does not need to be exactly perfect, although obviously sometimes it comes really close, giving us a 50% result. But we're seeing something in the ballpark, which means that for us as developers who want to test a condition, this is pretty darn close to there being a 50-50 chance. A statistician was probably going to bristle at this, but for our purposes for doing some A and B testing, boom, this looks pretty good. Okay, so I will just comment this out. I'll leave it here so you can check it on your own, but it's not actually going to be part of our function, right? JavaScript to test the coin toss function. All right. Okay, so we've got a coin toss. So here, first thing I'm doing in my jQuery to manipulate the page is to do a remove class and an add class. So if I wanted to do something with a visual design thing, like let's say there was some discussion as to whether this should be light on dark or dark on light, we could do something very simple. We could do a let's see, what do we want to do here? What we want to do is add a class of A or B on this thing based on whether or not it's true. So we can do something like var, oh shoot, let's just call this AB test is equal to A. But then we can do coin toss, right? If coin toss, right, then we can set AB test to B. So if we get a true result on our coin test, then AB test is going to be B. And then we can just drop this thing in just like this. We can do AB test. Oop, but not in quotes. We just want to drop in the variable, right? So that will add in our B, and here we actually need a space in here, so we add both the has.js and the A or B classes. Okay? Ugly little script to determine A or B test, just like that. Okay, so now we've got a little variable to work with, and if we look at our returned HTML, and again, we're loading the same script up on every single page, so we can do something, what doesn't it like? Line 90, if coin toss, need a second parentheses, just like that. All right, so if we look at our generated source, or selection source here, we should see that along with our has.js class, we also have an A class up there. Okay, so if our A/B test that we're going to run is light on dark or dark on light, we can just decide that, you know what, for A.html, or frankly the default of HTML, we can do background white and color is black, right? That's going to be basically the default. And if we're doing our B test, we can do, oops, not A.html, html.a. And here we can do html.b. We'll do exactly the opposite, right? We'll do background black and color white. And just for the sake of getting true black on white and not having those little boxes, we can just do input. Right? I think this should work. So if we just sit here for a while on this page and reload it, oh, that's funny. Does everybody see why I screwed that up? Right? Like we're getting these black on white boxes here, which look really funky. I did not use my descendant selector. I'm going to do class B input. That will get a background black and white. Right? So we get, there we go. So that's black. Okay. Now, the thing with A/B testing is that for a truly conclusive, or if not conclusive, then at least a veritable A/B test, your site should only be A/B testing one feature at a time. So if the big discussion within the team is it better to do a light on dark or a dark on light site design, then the one thing that you're going to test at that time is going to be the dark on light or light on dark site, just like that. So let me do a quick commit here. All right, so we'll do the CSS first. Added light, dark CSS for A/B test. Okay, that's good. All right, so we've got that, and now if I do git diff on my JavaScript, right, we've got a few different things here. We've got our function on our coin toss, and then here's our little script. So actually, let's do git add patch again. Did it do all of that together? So it's close enough that it wants to do this all into one function, and now I'm going to freak out because I'm trying to remember how it is to split it into something different. 1 second here. I just want to get the right thing. I'm going to search this on my other computer. Let's see, patch mode, git patch mode split. Yeah, it's S. Okay. So let's split it into two different hunks. Okay, so now I've got my hunk that is just the coin toss and that task function. So yes, I want to stage that. No, I don't want to stage that. No, I don't want to stage that. Okay, so you can do git add dot. Oops, not git add dot. That'll just add everything. We need to do git commit. Added coin toss function for A/B testing. All right, so here's our little A/B test logic. So we'll say git add dot. We don't need to split this into two things. Added ugly logic for adding an A or B class to HTML. Okay, so we've got that. So that little logic combined with the HTML is going to allow us to show our users two different things. What's missing here is we don't have any way in our results to find out whether somebody had an A or a B test. So we need to add some kind of mechanism for this. And I'm going to do the ugliest little like JavaScript friendly way possible. So on our input form, right, I'm going to add down here below my nice list, like I've been preaching about forever, and I'm going to do an input type hidden, which is a special type of class that is going to allow us to hold on to some kind of value that we can then pass on to our server to know whether this is A or B. All right, so input type hidden, name, we can just call this A/B test. We can even give it an ID if we want to, A/B test, and then value. Okay, now because I am interested in trying to include JavaScript-less users and things like this, for a visual test like this that might or might not be good, but we can at least say by default somebody should have the A test, right? Just like that. And what we'll need our JavaScript to do now is to, in addition to this class, we need to go and find A/B test and set its value equal to A/B test. Okay, again, this is our A/B test variable here. So we start by defaulting to A, which our JavaScriptless users are also going to get. Right, value A, and what this should do is find our ID A/B test and set its value based on whatever happens from our coin toss. So if it's B, we're going to get B there. Okay. All right, so let's quickly test this. So if we reload this again, there it's black. Okay, so what are we getting? If I do view selection source again, boom. I don't know if you can see that. Let's blow it up. Right, on our black page, right, white on black, we've got value B here. So now, when this form gets submitted, I can actually say, oh, this was a value B thing. Now, the other thing about A/B testing is we don't want to just go by, oh, did they like it? Right? We want to test for some kind of behavior, which of course, if you're doing light on dark or something, that's not really what you're testing for. You want to test for something else, like was there better successes in logging in, or did more users sign up when they were presented with the dark on light design or the light on dark design. But here this allows us to at least programmatically track what condition this person was given. Okay, so let me make one more commit here. Okay, and yeah, that looks good. So we'll just, I think we can make one nice commit out of that. Added hidden form element and JavaScript for tracking test condition, right? A or B. Just like that. And of course we could improve this further, right? We could do A/B test, but then we could concatenate with that something like light on dark or something. So they got the B light on dark test or the A light on dark test. So that if you're tracking all this data in a database somewhere, you can actually see what the conditions were and what else the user was doing at that particular point in time. Okay? All right, let's try one other thing, and then I'm probably going to wrap this up. So here's our coin toss. We're doing this test like that. What I want to do, though, is actually change my form and specifically change the value on this submit button, right? Going to do our A test, our default that will leave coded in HTML will be login, and then our B test will be to sign in. All right, so first let's go to our CSS, and I'm just going to comment this out again so it's there for reference. All right. A/B test, light on dark, dark on light. Okay, so it's there. You can see it, but it's not going to have any effect anymore because we've gotten rid of that stuff. Now the A/B test we're setting up is our login text. So we've already got our A condition in here, right? A is going to be login. Value A, again, we've got that in our submit button like that. So what we need to do now is to figure out how we want to handle this programmatically. So we're logging this A/B test value, and now we just need to figure out what we're going to do. So what I would say is, let's just use this little piece of logic here. This is ugly, but it's going to do the job. We can say, here's our B test. We're setting that, and now we're going to actually go and find our ID submit button. We're going to set its value to sign in. All right? Again, this is A/B testing on the cheap, but this is going to have the correct effect, right? If it's the A test and if that stands after our coin toss, no problem. Otherwise, if it's B test, then we're going to go and drop our submit button, right, in our HTML, and we're going to set its value to sign in instead of login. So let's see what happens when we try to run this. All right. So I'll reload. This will definitely go white. Okay, there's login, login. The question is, should have probably actually kept this with the black and white to see if there we go. There's a sign in one. Okay, so there we've got it. So that this one is going to be sign in instead of login. So our test is correct. There's login. There's sign in. Okay, and again, the logic that we put in before, where we're doing this hidden field, right? We're still going to be able to track what condition we were testing in. And then we would leave this thing go for a week or something like that. Okay? All right, let me just check my notes here and make sure I went through everything I said I wanted to, but I believe I did. Yep, we look good. All right, I hope you enjoyed this little at-home edition of 362. I'll see you guys all on Monday.